Welcome to another episode of Ancient Geeks, a podcast in which two geeks of a certain age, i.e. old, look back on their younger selves and how they discovered all things geeky. We were geeks before it was chic, and today we're doing another special episode. We're not going back through the mists of gauzy nostalgia to the early days of the Fantastic Four, as we did in the last episode in the 1980s with John Byrne. We're going to talk about the contemporary Fantastic Four movie. So that's the agenda for today. I'm your co-host, Tom Barr, the living Tom Burst.
And I'm your co-host, Stephen Taylor.
So, what have you been doing lately, Stephen, that is geek related?
So my geek thing today, I got a couple things, but I'm going to just stick with one, which is I went to see Weird Al Yankovic on Sunday in Huntsville with my good friend Michael Bailey. And I feel like it fits into the geekery because one, his encore is entirely Star Wars based. It's the Saga Begins, his parody of American Pie, and then which is about the Phantom Menace, and then Yoda, among other things. There's Darth Vader and Stormtroopers and R2-D2, and in fact Boba Fett on stage in full regalia. But it also, I think it fits the theme of the podcast. Well, I'll wax nostalgic. This is the gauzy past, I guess. But yes. I realized that his parody Yoda, which is a parody of the Kinks' Lola, in case anyone didn't know, I first heard on Dr. Demento before it was even an official released song, like probably back in 1980, 81. Mm-hmm. So it spans a very long time. It is clearly geeky. And just also strikes me as what a remarkable career Weird Al Yankovic has had. 40-something years now.
I know, yeah.
So it was really a great show. If anyone ever gets a chance to see him, I would encourage it. For a 65-year-old man, he is quite limber still. And how he made all those costume changes in the Alabama heat, because it was an outdoor venue, and didn't pass out. Very impressive.
Hats off to him. I couldn't do that.
No.
Yeah. So is it like you get like a little extra edge in cardio if you have an accordion strapped
Apparently,
to you?
it's part of it is the accordion helps with the cardio, but
okay.
He can still do a high kick. I don't think he kicked quite as high the last time. I've seen him 3 times. Once was 36, 37, 38 years ago, and then I saw him about 10 years ago when he was in Birmingham and took my family. His high kick is not maybe quite as high as it was 10 years ago, but it's still pretty damn impressive.
Better than I could do.
Oh, I would break something, or I don't know what I would do, but yeah.
We are ancient geeks.
Yeah, but he's older than both of us. But anyway, that's all right.
All right. So my latest geekery is I went on a little bit of a book buying binge. So I got the visual guide to Castle Amber.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
Wasn't there software for that at one point?
I think there was. Where you could tour the castle. Yeah. Anyway, so it's room by room through Castle Amber with lots of little factoids about the Amber series written by Zelazny and Neil Randall. So that was fun. I also got the Godzilla Encyclopedia, which is as advertised, every couple of pages, it's a new version of Godzilla or one of the other kaiju from the Japanese movies.
I blame the radiation.
It's all radiation. It can do anything. And last of all, this just arrived yesterday. Monsters are attacking Tokyo, which isn't an encyclopedic listing of all the monsters, but is more a discussion with interviews of people who are involved in the production of these movies. So that's all for our upcoming episode on the Godzilla movies.
Fantastic.
Fantastic, you say.
Indeed. What a segue.
You
that
say.
Was my segue.
Okay, so music-wise, what would you pick for this episode? If we could afford it.
Sure. I decided while I was watching the film that I liked whatever the end theme song was over the credits, and I meant to look up what it's called, and I didn't.
Okay.
So that's my choice.
So is that where they say "Fantastic" for that one?
No. It's the orchestral end title theme. I liked it, but I don't remember. But I didn't look it up.
Okay.
How about yourself?
I would, maybe go back to one of the old Fantastic Four cartoons, which they actually reference in the movie,
yes.
And get the catchy theme from that. I don't know. I did sort of like the music in this. We'll get to that,
Hmm.
later. But all right. Well, let's talk about the movie. So before we get into the meat of the matter, first we want to say that we're going to be doing a spoilers free section, and then get into the juicy deets of having watched the movie. And if you've watched the movie or you don't care about being spoiled by the spoilers, we'll get into things that other listeners may not want us to talk about. A couple of other points to cover before we begin. I think one thing I would really like to talk about is we're not looking for a movie to be a recreation of the comic for its own sake. Right. Well, so we'll inevitably talk about the comparison between the comics that we've talked a lot about in this podcast and the movie. But I think both of us aren't necessarily looking for just a panel by panel recreation on the screen of the comics.
Right. No, I agree.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. So like we're not one of those people who kind of sniffs at something because they got a minor villain in the Fantastic Four verse wrong,
Mole
or
Man didn't have a green cape.
yes, and a staff. Yeah, I mean, we're more looking at like what makes these comics great and could be translated to the screen, at least catching the spirit of the Fantastic Four.
Hmm.
Um, and secondly, I wanted to say, would this movie be enjoyable for people who aren't comics fans? Is something that I would also imagine we're going to talk about a bit during the course of this episode, because this is Marvel's attempt to kind of win back an audience. And it's a kind of an interesting question. What's that audience that they're trying to win? And I would imagine some of them would be people who aren't just merely dragged along to a Fantastic Four movie because
No, clearly.
it's somebody's choice of movie for that particular date night. Um, but is this something that people who aren't comics fans, old or young, or somewhere in between, would enjoy? All right. So, what did you like in a spoiler-free fashion about this movie?
So on a I like this movie. I'll even start and say that it's always hard to grade these things, partially because there's recency bias and also you know, memories fade about other things. But I think if I'm going to score it on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably give it an 8. I think it's a
Hmm.
solid B plus movie. As a superhero movie, I'm not sure. Judging against other movies is a different kind of scale, I suppose. But I enjoyed it. I was entertained. I liked it at least as much as I liked the Superman film, maybe a little
Hmm.
more actually. And I have some comparisons we can talk about later in the podcast. I thought that it was I liked the look of the film. I thought that it was a little different than some of the other Marvel movies. The color palette is definitely different. I didn't feel like I was in an Avengers movie or whatever. I liked the cast. I thought they did a good job with the cast. I mean, I can
Yeah.
say this, but this is like the the least controversial thing that I could possibly say, but I'll say it anyway. It's definitely the best Fantastic Four movie ever made.
Oh, definitely.
Not that that's hard to do
That's
because
a
the other ones
high
are
bar
it's a high
indeed.
bar. I know, it's a high bar.
Did you ever see the Miles Teller one?
I've seen pieces of it.
I
I watched, I think, the two, but I remember it was so boring that I didn't really pay attention. But I watched the first two. Maybe my kids watched it and I sort of watched it. I never saw it. Was Roger Corman made the first one, right?
Yeah, he made the first one, which
Which
was
is
never
just,
released
no, but I've seen
theatrically.
pieces of it. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, yeah. It,
But yeah, this was, I mean, this is, I mean, I guess if my non-spoiler short review would be this, and we can talk about specifics, I would say that this was a one of the better superhero movies that's come out in some time, in my view.
yeah,
I think they did a pretty good job of capturing these characters in a way that I found acceptable, that quite good in some cases. Actually, overall, I like all of the way they portrayed the characters. I thought the story was interesting. I have some quibbles about certain aspects of the story or about maybe the pacing and maybe some of the stakes or the way the stakes are portrayed on screen. It felt like an old school superhero movie in that they were the only superheroes on Earth because this is an
hmm,
alternate Earth 828 which apparently is a nod to Jack Kirby, who his birthday is August 28th. Anyway, so I liked it. I liked it. We can talk about specifics. What's your general review before we get into specifics?
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. It was a fun movie. I love that it was steering into the early years of not just the Fantastic Four, but Marvel Comics.
Hmm.
And I think we're both likely to have a lot to say about that. But there was no origin, thank goodness for that.
Yes.
There was
Just
none of
hints
the
of.
right, and there was no baggage from the MCU. It
Right.
wasn't that you had to have consumed a whole bunch of other TV shows and movies in order to enjoy this. I thought that was great. I thought it's not spoiling anything to say that Galactus and the Silver Surfer are in this because
Hmm.
they're in the trailers. But I thought it was a really good take on both of those characters,
I agree.
and I think a good choice for a first villain for the Fantastic Four. You had a bit of a family dynamic, there that I think really defines the Fantastic Four as we talked about from its earliest days through the John Byrne days that we talked about and beyond. That's a key part of what it means to be a Fantastic Four story is
Hmm.
to see those characters playing off one another. Some of them are actually family. Some of them are,
Found family.
found family, but well said. But that was there. They toned down the jokes. It
Hmm.
wasn't the kind of snarky tone that a lot of
It wasn't quippy.
yeah, it wasn't quippy. I thought that was really good. I mean, there's still a little humor in there.
Sure, there is.
But it's sort of like more joshing each other than,
Hmm.
I don't know, the kind of snarky humor that takes you out of the movie. I say that a lot. I realize that what I don't like sometimes about visual media is when they take you out of the story.
Hmm.
You're like a level removed from what you're looking at. Um, so overall, I really liked it. I mean, we'll talk about a whole bunch of things concerning this
Hmm.
movie, but that's my first cut at how I reacted to the movie.
Fair enough.
Was there anything that you didn't like or without giving away anything or left you
No,
feeling a
I
little meh?
think, and it's a vague sense. In the sense that I don't have like a really succinct way of putting it. In a weird way, I felt like some of the tension could have been higher, but I can't figure out how I wanted it to be higher. But I felt like, so there's some, maybe it's a pacing, it's not pacing. The pacing was pretty good, actually. Um, there's nothing that I could say that I really disliked. I'll be honest. I mean, I can critique, but I think it requires possible spoilers, so I won't say much more than that.
Okay.
But again, I really liked the cast. I liked the fact that it was, unlike a lot of superhero movies, didn't feel overly crowded. I think
Hmm.
maybe my one critique is sometimes it felt maybe less populated than I would have liked
Yes.
in a weird kind of
I
way,
I
even though there's lots of
definitely
crowds and things, but it does feel sparse in places.
there are almost no supporting characters in this movie.
That's right. So I mean, and again, not to get to say that in a non-spoiler way. I mean, I can't decide if that's not there are no supporting characters. But on the flip side, there were supporting characters in Superman that didn't have enough time to get developed in any beyond like a scene here, a scene there.
Right.
So in some ways, I think, especially with four main characters, um, and I recalled one of the things you didn't like about Superman was that there wasn't enough, there was so much kinetic action and splody activity that there wasn't time to pause and see the
Right.
characters. So in this film, there is a little less action, I think, than Superman. Well, there's plenty of action, but there's less of it, I think, and there's more time with the characters.
Yeah.
And it's really those four. And I mean, I'm not sure if you were making a comment or not. I would say that not just that the family stuff is a bit or however you put it. I think it's central to the whole movie,
Yeah.
in a way that I was glad to see, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. So although they didn't have really almost any minor characters,
Right.
the film still worked.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
the focus on the four of them was plenty. I agree with that, and I definitely agree with what you said about the fight scenes. So I love superhero battles.
Hmm.
I think that some of my favorite issues of Marvel Comics have been very battle based. There was I might have mentioned it before on the podcast, but there was an Avengers annual where the Avengers are fighting the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and it's
Hmm.
like it just it worked,
Right.
and there were issues of the X-Men like that, and other comics that I think were just dandy having the fight scenes. But as I said in the Superman review, it just got to be too much. I just
Hmm.
felt numbed by it,
Hmm.
or at times even assaulted by it in IMAX. But here, the battle scenes were meaningful.
Hmm.
They weren't just fighting for their own sakes. They were, what was happening in the fight scene was important dramatically. They were not too long. They were interesting. So yeah, I mean, strongly agree with you that the action part of the movie was really good.
Excellent. I mean, I'll say this, and maybe this is high praise. After watching this movie, not only did I want more of these characters and more of this particular superhero franchise on screen, it actually made me like maybe I will watch Thunderbolts. So
Yeah,
that's kind of a weird because I'm like before that I didn't really care. Maybe it did its job in that sense. It's made me a little more interested in the MCU, and I've been somewhat disinterested of late.
yeah, yeah. Same here. Though oddly, I would say even though the movie wasn't crowded out by overly long fight scenes, it felt like some of the aspects of character development were missing. Like there were scenes that may have been in a longer version of this that were cut
Oh no, I
out.
think there's some truth to that. Yes,
Yeah, I mean,
I agree.
and when we talk about the individual characters in the Fantastic Four, I think that'll make more meaning, be more meaningful. But the other thing I wanted to say that I left me feeling a little weird, and it isn't a fault of the movie; it's more a fault of the franchise
Hmm.
and or the studio, I should say, to be more accurate, is that I liked this Fantastic Four and this Marvel movie so much for the reasons we talked about.
Hmm.
I almost don't want it to be rolled into the existing MCU.
Hmm.
I like Marvel itself has done things like that before. Like they had like an early version of the X-Men, from the 60s, kind of come to the modern world. That was an interesting idea, and I guess that's going to be kind of the flavor of what happens with Avengers Doomsday. But in a weird way, I wish, and we can talk about this more later, but I
Hmm.
almost wish that the existing MCU were rolled into this universe than the other way
Mm,
around.
I can see that. Yeah, I mean, I, I would. Part of me agrees. Um, they will be so difficult to do in some ways without really just really rebooting everything.
Yeah,
So I think I'm less. I understand what you're saying and do kind of agree. And in some ways, it would have been interesting if this had been the real starting spot for the MCU. It would have developed very differently. Um, but I am actually looking forward to these characters interacting with our heroes. Although how they're going to make that work is going to be a challenge,
yeah.
I think. But yeah.
I thought the music was okay. I think it did the job of maybe supplementing what you were watching without it being too intrusive, as sometimes
Yes.
soundtracks and comic book movies or action movies can be. I didn't have anything that stuck in my head afterwards, the
Right.
way that the Iggy Pop song at the end of Superman did, which I played over and over again after the movie.
Yeah, I've
Um,
listened to the overall soundtrack is actually pretty good. I'm trying to remember. I'm gonna mispronounce his name. Giacchino, I think is his name. Michael Giacchino. And
okay.
he has done a lot of music, and I want to say even maybe some Star Trek. I should look these things up before I start saying things. I know I've seen his name before, and I think that is really always my impression of his soundtracks, that
Yeah.
they do the job during the film, but I rarely ever want to sit and listen to them the way I would listen to a John Williams score or some other composer. So I think
Right.
he's good, but he doesn't like transcend the movie in a way that makes me like, oh, I really want to, or that the music in some ways is so intricately intertwined with the scene, the way some of the Star Trek 2 and 3, and I'm blanking on the name, that stuff really evokes so much what's going on screen, or it becomes just fused with it. And I don't
Right.
think this music did that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the individual characters again without spoilers. So Reed first. What did you think of Pedro Pascal as Reed?
So I think that I thought he did a decent job with the character. I thought it was an attempt to. I was satisfied. Partially it's hard for me to do this without spoiling things, but I found him to be perfectly serviceable in the character. I think um, the mustache didn't bother me. In fact, he had a little bit of a beard going, which worked just fine. I
Yeah, I
thought
mean
he was.
that's where you're reproducing the comic book for its own sake. If you're
Oh yeah.
getting upset over a
Oh yeah,
mustache.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree, but still, um, I thought he played the character well. I had no particular gripes about the character. How about you?
I thought he was okay. Like
Hmm.
at times you saw the hints of what kind of really not just defined Reed, but made him an interesting character.
Hmm.
That he's so self-absorbed,
Hmm.
when he gets off doing his science thing, he's
Right.
often kind of oblivious to the rest of the
Yes.
world.
Yes.
We talked about that like in the Burn episode where he's in
Hmm.
the negative zone, is kind of
Yes.
losing track of the fact that he's about to be obliterated by
Right.
by
Right.
some antimatter zone that he's drifting into. He's certainly a loving person. You
Hmm.
see that, which is also part of the Reed Richards character. You get a bit of his arrogance where
Hmm.
he kind of has to struggle with the fact that he might not be able to solve this particular problem.
Yes.
Or there are things that he's maybe not as good at as he seems. But otherwise it was a workmanlike delivery by Pedro Pascal. I thought he's a good actor, but I just
He's a very
like
good actor. I'm going to say something that I heard another. I think it was on the Ringer verse, but I was listening to a couple other reviews, and I think this is actually a good note about his performance. Given, especially since this is like the summer of Pedro Pascal, he's in like four movies or something. I don't know.
yeah.
Uh, I His somewhat understated performance may be a benefit to the film, so it didn't become the Pedro Pascal show. So in some
Oh,
ways,
that's a good point.
I think
Okay.
that as an ensemble, he didn't overpower the Fantastic Four, which I appreciated that even when I was watching it. Um, I agree that there's and I also think maybe within the purview of it being they've been the Fantastic Four for 4 years. Um, Maybe he's still in development in some ways as a character. But I also think that they wanted to portray Sue as the leader of the team, which I actually liked. But that may be part of his uh, what am I trying to say? This one understated performance.
Yeah. Yeah. How about Sue? What was your
I thought she was great. I thought they did a good job with the casting. I thought she worked well. And I did notice that she would often, I mean, I didn't think, no, they never said, hey, Sue's the leader of the team. I mean, they did the whole Future Foundation thing, which in some ways comes
right?
from the comics. But I noticed very specifically in at least two scenes, and one's with Galactus, and I can't remember the other one, she speaks first. She
Yeah.
speaks for the team, and that struck me. What was
Yeah.
your thoughts?
So I don't dislike her as an actress, but she's
Hmm.
not somebody Vanessa Kirby that I really say, wow, this is a Vanessa Kirby movie. This is going to be
Hmm.
great.
Right, right.
She didn't work for me.
Okay.
She seemed a little bit too dour at
Hmm.
times, and I don't know. I don't want to make a snarky comment here, but I just the comics really struggled with her as a character,
Hmm.
and trying to make her stronger than the kind of the 60s style woman depiction that
Hmm.
she started out as took a while to work, but they did kind of figure it out. But she was still an optimistic person, a happy person by
Hmm.
nature, and so forth. Just again, Vanessa Kirby just seemed like I don't know, a little glowering at times. It just was odd.
I can see that. I think that character is incredibly difficult to cast because I
Yeah.
don't know that, and I haven't read a lot. I've read some contemporary Fantastic Four. Um, as I pointed out in the previous podcast, in the 60s and 70s, she was either a very demure, very like a housewifey kind of character, which was kind of
Oh,
odd given
very
her powers.
housewifey,
Yeah,
very
and
in
then
a almost borderline misogynistic
oh well,
way.
I would actually say in a definitely misogynistic.
Okay.
We
Yes.
don't have to be pulled the
Well
punches.
over the border.
Yeah, well over
Yeah.
the border actually. And then even in the 70s, they tried to do a little bit of the sort of um, women's lib of the time kind of like sitcom portrayal, like when they separate. Um, and even in the 60 in the Burn Run, she's I think at times still trying to figure out what to do with her. So I think, you know, I, the casting of the previous movies, I'm trying to think, and I don't even remember who played in the Miles Teller movie. I know it was Jessica Alba in the other two. And I think they struggle with trying to figure out whether she's supposed to be just an attractive side piece, kind of. I'm not side piece. That's not the right term. An attractive sort of window dressing for the movie, or the whole what should the age differential be between Reed and Sue, and then I don't know. I just felt like she was serious. Maybe she was too serious. I don't know. Um, And I think for me, it worked in this film in particular because the Fantastic Four in this movie are being kind of cast as these truly global heroes and very serious. They have a very sort of serious role they're playing in a
Right.
way that more than would be the case in the overall MCU. So it didn't. I found it. I liked her portrayal, but I understand what you're saying about the. She is very. She is serious. Yes.
Yeah.
I think they're struggling to not ever make her the damsel in distress,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Um, so maybe that anyway.
Yeah. And she does a lot in this movie.
She does.
Yeah. Um, Ben.
I thought he was perfect as Ben Grimm as the thing.
This is where I think I feel most strongly the missing backstory. Right. So
Hmm.
I thought that Eben Moss Bachrach was great as Ben
Hmm.
Grimm. I don't think you could find actually a better person
Hmm.
for that role. He was warm, but what I missed was a lot of the things we've talked about Ben Grimm as an interesting character. Is that okay? So here he is now in this movie, 4 years into being the Thing. I guess maybe he's worked through some of his bad feelings about being stuck in
I,
a rock monster body, but
I think we may tread on spoilering at this point, but I won't.
yeah,
I'll just say this. I take your point. I think there's some subtle nods in the film. I don't, part of me struggles with, and this is, I think, maybe this bothers me less than it bothers you, I think. I think that one of the struggles and with these films and portraying these characters, and sometimes in the comic book adaptation, is the need to hit all the notes.
right,
And I think that I don't know how you make that fit into the film unless you make it the origin story. And if it's not the origin story, I mean, I think it's just hard to like take the 15 minutes out of the film or more maybe to try to flesh that story out. And I'm not sure what it would have looked like in this film.
yeah,
Um, I mean, maybe and I think I do know, in fact, and this is not a spoiler, I don't know how much, but there's clearly a small subplot that gets truncated in this film that maybe they would have been more, they would have done what you
yeah,
wanted.
and maybe they'll have an opportunity to do it in the future. And
I, I,
not every issue of the comic, to be fair, and featured Ben grappling with his thinghood.
no, I mean, I would reference even back to the Fantastic Four random we talked about before, when he gets, trapped in the body of the thing and he becomes more happy-go-lucky because that's what he,
Yeah,
I mean, granted, that doesn't quite fit in some of the story here, but I just think about, and I put it on the Reddit page for those that haven't looked, that there's that bit where he dresses up like Indiana Jones. That's happy-go-lucky Ben, and that's kind of how he was in this movie.
yeah. Okay,
And I was
I
fine.
think
I was
that's
fine
totally
with that.
fair.
I was fine with that.
Totally
But I
fair.
understand your point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he was. Yeah,
Okay. And last of all, Johnny.
I was glad that Johnny was not a one-note character. I'll just put it that way.
Me too. I agree with that, though I couldn't figure out who he was.
Why? That's fair.
Yeah, he was sort of a junior scientist, but
Well, I mean, and I'm partially again stealing from something that I heard on the Ringer, but I think that, but this is also a problem with the comic, right? I mean, the fundamental problem with if you go with the pure origin story, what in the world is a teenager doing going into space?
that is
So
true.
if we take it more seriously that he was an astronaut, which I think is fair to say he was an astronaut, right? And they were
Yeah,
all, so then he's not just a junior scientist. He must really have some kind of training to have gone up in the
yeah,
first place. So I was willing to sort of accept that. And while he may be, there may be some other elements of his character that show up, I think I was fine. Now, whether he should be able to do what he did in the movie, I don't know. That's not fully well established, but I was pleased that he wasn't just a quippy Mimbo or whatever.
yes.
That or himbo, whatever I'm trying to say.
Himbo,
Himbo.
Manbo.
Ma'am, whatever.
No, that does sound like a minor Marvel Comics hero.
It does. It does.
Manbo, the
Man,
living man burst.
the living man bun. Um, anyway, yeah. So I was pleased with the casting on balance. I mean, there may be some tweaks that I would make, but I was pleased.
Yeah, and I was glad that they kind of caught the enthusiasm, the youthful enthusiasm
Yes,
of
yeah, yeah,
Johnny
yeah,
Storm,
yeah.
without again making him either a one-note character or a unbelievable adolescent.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so
Exactly.
so I'm going to revise what I put in my notes here a little upwards here on the performances.
Okay.
So I thought they were really good on average. There were some things I didn't like or some things I missed, but maybe we'll get them later. So it was good.
I'm defeating Mr. Negative. No.
Mr. Negative. All right. Did you like this movie better than Superman? I know you kind of answered this before, but
I
let's.
think I do. I think that they are both, I will say this. I think that they both um, are entertaining movies that have treated these characters better than in Superman's case, the best, as we talked about in our review, the best since the 1970s, or early 80s, depending. And then in this case, the best ever. And I was pleased by the films. So, but I think I like this one a little bit better. Um, how about you?
So, film criticism is not unidimensional. Uh,
What?
so, so I'm going to give a complicated answer. Don't you hate those articles that, by the way, that just now kind of grow up like fungus around the internet about something, something, something ranked, you know, episodes of Blake Seven ranked, or the
I
Amber
don't.
books ranked.
It
It's
depends on the ranking, I guess.
meaningless exercise.
That's true.
It's a meaningless
Although, don't
exercise.
we do it on the podcast sometimes?
We do. But anyway, it's not the whole reason for coming here.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
It's the witty banter.
it's the witty banter. So I would say I like this movie overall more than Superman,
Hmm.
but I liked Superman's ambition. So I thought that they were trying to
Okay.
do something, like at the end of the movie, the kindness is punk theme, trying to
Right.
then, kind of take, yeah, take the essence of what Superman is all about, the
Hmm.
optimism, et cetera, and kind of give it a little bit of a 2020s spin to it, and making that central to the story, his decency. I'd like that, although I thought many things about the movie still annoy me,
Hmm.
and I wish that. I really dearly hope that the next movie that they make kind of addresses some of those failings of the Superman movie. So again, it's not unidimensional. I like this better as a movie. It was a more fun movie to watch, I thought, but at the same time, um, I have to take my hat off to the ambition behind James
So
Gunn's Superman.
two thoughts. I think one, I really do think they do share the following. They're both very optimistic films,
Yeah,
um, which I appreciate. I think both of them had jobs to do. They were
Hmm.
slightly different jobs, and I think the Superman movie had a bigger load to carry.
Yeah.
Um, James Gunn's trying to, I wouldn't even say resurrect because resurrect assumes it was ever alive in the first place. That he's trying to finally bring to life the DC universe on film, right? I
Yes.
mean, there have been plenty of movies, but they just haven't worked. This is simply trying to reignite some level of interest in the MCU after a little bit of superhero fatigue.
Hmm.
I think both of them accomplished for me at least, both of them accomplished their task as measured again by the following. As we said in the Superman review, do I want to see another Superman movie? Yes. Am I now more interested than I was in various James Gunn projects that are coming out into the DCU? I am. And with the Fantastic Four, am I now a little more interested in, a little more excited now about? I mean, I was going to watch Avengers Doomsday just because I like Avengers movies and Doom's Doom, and I'm curious about this whole Robert Downey Jr. thing and all this. But now I'm like kind of excited about it, and I was like mildly disappointed when I realized it's December 26th and not December 25.
Yeah.
And I am kind of interested now in maybe watching some of the more recent movies just to see what's they're developing in a way that I was not interested before. So I think, for me at least, they're both successful. And they both got me to go to the movies. Now, I'll admit the main reason I went to see them at the movie theater is because it's a podcast, not because I might have gone, I might not have gone. I probably would have waited, to be honest, or at least waited to see what the reviews were. But I'm now more interested in these films than I was before. So mission accomplished in that sense.
Yeah. And it was way better than practically anything I've seen from Marvel for the last couple of years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Marvel has become sort of a chore.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just been too much.
yeah, too much. Nothing stands on its own. It's yeah, a lot of it is a very dubious quality. Things that are rushed out. Just feels like the content machine has to keep running. This felt like somebody really wanted to do a good Fantastic Four movie. It definitely felt like the Fantastic Four, and they nailed it
Yeah,
in
I
that
agree.
sense. In that sense, although I have quibbles about the
Well,
movie.
sure. There's always quibbles.
And we haven't talked about the production design, surprisingly. So
Yeah, I'd
it
mentioned
was
the color palette, but
amazing.
I
Yeah,
was very pleased, and I like the retro '60s stuff.
yeah, the Tomorrowland look to everything.
Yes.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Oh, there we go again. Um, but it just really,
Well,
you know,
and to that point, oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say because I was trying to remember the name and I Googled it real quick. So Matt Shankman is the director,
Yeah,
and he also was heavily involved in WandaVision, and which was one of the things I liked about WandaVision was it did a really good job of establishing different aesthetics for different episodes. And I think that is seen in this film, right? The way in which the world looks a certain way. I really liked.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Is this a movie for someone who isn't a comics fan?
So I was thinking about that because we've talked about it before when you were talking about it earlier. I'm going to say that's a trick question. And the reason I say it's a trick question or a problematic question is um, it depends on what you mean by comic fan. I think that if you like superhero
Oh, wait a
movies,
minute. You're not throwing out the
no,
definitional dodge, are
yeah,
you?
I am. Because
Well,
here's the
define
deal.
for me.
Well, I think what you're saying is if a hardcore comic book reader,
Yeah,
but definitionally, this is, okay, I'm going to be an asshole academic for a minute. Definitionally speaking, all of these movies must attract people that don't read the comics. My kids like these movies, they don't read the comics.
yeah.
So I mean, maybe do you have to have read Fantastic Four comics to enjoy this movie? No. Do you have to like superhero movies to like this movie? Probably. And they're, in fact, I guess part of my now my apparently my alter ego is Mr. Difficult, or maybe it's Doctor Difficult because I'm doing this academic BS, or sort of
I really like that title.
Doctor
I
Difficult,
think you should embrace Dr. Difficult. That's terrific.
Doctor Doctor Charles Von Difficult. Um, Hey, I'm gonna ask you a sideways question as I try to sort of center in on this. Can you think of a superhero movie that a non-superhero liking person would watch and say, "Oh, this is a great movie by itself."
Well,
And
I think the original Superman movie certainly,
I think that probably
which
fits.
did appeal to a lot of people. I think even like the X-Men movie, the first one.
But I mean, if the and this is where it becomes Dr. Difficult again. If the metric is appeal to a lot of people, they all appeal to a lot of people because they all make a crap ton of money. That's all
Yeah.
that that's
Well,
so I
let's unpack this. Like, so would somebody who isn't looking for comic book references
right,
think that there are parts of this movie that are exciting?
right.
Would they feel that there are real stakes for the main
Yeah.
characters that kind of engage you?
Hmm.
Do you have some sense of attachment to those characters? I would say yes, and all those, and
Yeah.
also too, like, do you find the fantastical elements really, whatever the emotion is that you're looking for, awe-inspiring, or just give you that little thrill of coolness or
Right.
whatever? I would say yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. So I
Yeah.
would say it this way. I mean, I think if you like action movies and you like a little bit of lighthearted entertainment that's not super serious, it's not an old country for old men.
Yeah.
I think yes, this movie is not one you have to have you have to know nothing about the characters. You can enjoy this movie. If you know nothing about Marvel Comics, you can enjoy this movie. You do not have to have read, every Galactus story in FF
Right.
history to enjoy the story. And in fact, so yeah, I think in that sense, yes. I mean, certainly more than I would think. I think it does. Now that I'll stop being Dr. Difficult and, and say that, yeah, to your point, I think there certainly are superhero movies that are like maybe just way too deep into this, especially given the way the MCU is structured, things where a lot of these stories are interconnected and you kind of have to have seen this to understand that. Although I guess a lot of
Right.
people saw Avengers Endgame who didn't see the other movies. But so I mean, in some ways, it's a trick question. That's why I think it's a trick question in the sense that it's kind of hard to parse out. People clearly go to these movies without knowing the kind of stuff you and I know.
Right.
That is absolutely the case, right? So, but this is one of the so I mean, it's certainly one of the better ones, and it's one that does it could totally stand alone. If you could watch this movie and never watch another other comic movie and be perfectly
Right.
self-contained. So that's I
Yeah.
think a positive part of it.
Yeah. And it's not like the sort of media like this is a much longer conversation. Like what Star Trek Strange New World seems to be turning into, which is just constant callbacks. That you really have to
Right.
be a fan of Star Trek to watch that show. Same thing with Lower Decks and
I,
other.
that's a debate for another day because Dr. Difficult may have a slightly different opinion about that than Mr. Negative does.
I'm hoping that you have a different opinion about that, and we can talk about it in a later episode. Okay, so we've reached the boundaries of spoiler
That's
land.
right.
So past here, beware. We're going to talk about the movie in more detail. So, was there anything that you liked, you wanted to say about the movie that you didn't get into in the non-spoiler part of this? I had a couple of them.
Are we in spoiler
We're in
land now?
we're in spoiler
We're in spoiler
town.
land. Okay, spoiler land.
Yes, which is right next to Flavor Town.
Excellent.
Conveniently.
Conveniently, just in case,
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe I think it'll come up organically. I don't think I have a specific like, oh, I was just dying to say something.
Okay.
But let's talk about
Want to
so
talk
let's
about
talk about some
Galactus?
of the character stuff. Well, let's do Galactus. Let's do Galactus
Galactus, yeah.
because it is I thought Galactus was great.
He was
He
amazing.
looked great. He sounded great. It was a good Galactus story.
Yeah.
I like the kind of like again, since we're going to talk about Godzilla soon, the kaiju of it all when he's like rampaging through Manhattan is great.
Yeah. Well, just the,
Um,
the cosmic scale
yes,
of him
yes.
and the Silver Surfer, I that was brilliant.
I
So
thought the surfer was great.
Galactus's ship was awe-inspiring.
Yeah, I
When you
was.
first see that emerge from the planet
Hmm.
that he's currently consuming, that's great.
Hmm.
When you first see him inside of his ship, the
Yes,
the eyes light up,
yes,
and
yes.
you kind of progressively get a sense that there is this
Hmm.
massive being sitting
Yes.
there. All that was fantastic, just
And
fantastic.
it paid perfect homage to the Kirby design and did not look ridiculous to me at all.
No.
It was yeah, it was great. I liked I had no problem with the female Silver Surfer. It certainly fit the story perfectly well. I think there is a
Yeah,
version where she's the Silver Surfer, and I didn't do the research on that. I like the visual effects. There's one great shot where she's like in like it's all like almost a sunburst kind of like all white
yeah,
around her. It was I thought the visuals were great. When she's chasing them, it looked like I would envision the Silver Surfer looking on screen.
right.
I liked all that quite a bit.
Yeah, and
Um, I,
the whole trip to Galactus's ship and back
yes,
was a very exciting sequence.
I agree.
So you had the moment of mystery, what the heck is on the other end of this trip that we are
Mhm.
going to be confronting. There
Yes.
was the horror and awe that you would feel encountering Galactus, and then
Hmm.
there's the genuinely exciting escape from the ship
Yes.
that was really well done.
While giving birth.
Yes, while giving birth. Yeah,
So I didn't want to say this, and this is a spoilerish thing because I didn't. I liked the fact, although it still kind of like amazed me. No one ever said maybe the pregnant woman shouldn't go into space.
exactly.
I just kind of appreciate it. It's like it's gonna do this thing, and
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I was very I was pleased. I mean, I again to get this. The only thing that this is more of a feeling, and I can't even quite put my finger on it. The degree to which it really felt like he was going to eat the earth somehow didn't quite reach the level I would like to have reached. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Yeah.
But still, and I know they had to empty out. I actually made sense. They emptied out Manhattan. That was kind of cool. I like the Mole Man actually. What did you think about the Mole Man?
Nah, he didn't do it for me.
Okay.
That was where again I felt like as a comics fan I knew what was going on. I
Hmm.
thought the movie didn't supply enough. Like
Okay.
you saw like a tiny bit of setup, almost like if you blink and you miss it, you wouldn't maybe
Hmm.
next make the connection between the giant monster coming out of the ground and the mole
Mm.
man. And I don't care that the mole man wasn't dressed in the traditional
No,
costume
I was joking
and
about that.
so
Yeah.
forth. But Subterranea wasn't really kind of well set up, so
Hmm.
it was there as a plot device
Yeah,
almost
yeah.
that I
I
yeah
like
I
the little meeting where he's all being a pain.
yeah I mean that was good. I mean that was good acting and good
Yeah.
writing in that
Yeah.
scene, but I didn't feel like the mole
That's
man
fair.
fit well into the
That's fair.
story.
That's fair. No, I mean, I don't know. This is the thing that I just it's a good question. I guess and maybe it bothers me less than it bothers you. The elements are all there in the film to connect. I think if you
Right.
pay attention to the newsreel part, he does show up and there is dialogue that establishes who he is. Granted, if you don't know what you're looking at, it's harder to fully process. I guess I prefer there to be less of it and you have to figure it out than to be bonk me over the head with it so that I know what it is.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I just thought they almost could have told the story without him, just as they could have told the story without the Alicia Masters stand-in.
That's true. And that's the part that I think was uh, based on something that I read that's probably was filmed and cut.
Okay.
That there's more of that, but I did not 100% confirm that.
Yeah, so for the non-Fantastic Four nerds here, Alicia Masters is Ben Grimm's girlfriend. She's blind, but she still loves Ben, even though she definitely knows that he's
Hmm.
a rock monster. He's the thing, but she sees who he really is behind the rock monster face, and this character just kind of was thrown in, and they get a little flirty.
Hmm.
Not even like dangling that as well. Here's someone you know a little bit that you should care about,
Hmm.
in the face of this catastrophe that's about to happen. Even there, it just wasn't
I thought they did
isn't
enough to
interesting.
suggest that he was shy about talking to her, but was interested, and that she was clearly
Oh
interested in
yeah,
talking to
definitely.
him from the beginning. So I was fine with that. It probably could have been a little bit more. There is a scene, but again, it's subtle, where he's looking at a reflection in a window of a TV with his old face that fits
Yes.
his new face, and I thought that was another nod to what you're asking for,
Yeah.
but that is underdeveloped in that sense. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm fine if they develop it more in a
Mhm.
future movie. Um, how about Franklin?
So I'm interested in this Franklin stuff. I mean, Franklin is in the comic, especially later, but even early on, even the parts that we talked about, he's like an incredibly powerful mutant, right?
Yeah,
So, and apparently there is, and I haven't read it yet, there is some comic where there's some interaction with Galactus and Franklin that I haven't read. It's on my list of things to do. So I think some of this does have some origins in the comics. So I've been on both sides of this in terms of Franklin is the MacGuffin of the movie, right? He is the thing that sort of drives the plot. That Galactus wants Franklin to take his place. So part of me felt like, gosh, this is just a almost a cliched story. But on the other hand, it's like really a deeply embedded story,
hmm
whether we're talking about, you know, Abraham and Isaac, whether we're talking about the Christ story, whether we're talking about Rumpelstiltskin. I mean, this whole idea of like the
right,
child being the sacrifice that has to be made was interesting, and I think it really was trying to emphasize the family aspect of the group. Um, and I mean, part of me was like, I'm like reading, like, well, if you got to sacrifice, it's like the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few of the
right.
one kind of thing. Well, one baby for the whole planet's actually a pretty good trade, but by the same token, it's your baby, especially
Right.
one. That's a whole different story. And then, so I was more than happy with it. I thought it worked out fine. Um, I I really at the very end, again, we're in spoiler territory when it appears that Sue is dead, or Sue was in fact dead. Part of me, because this was this weird movie that was in a different universe, like, is she dead? I didn't like. I kept expecting her not to be dead.
Right.
And the fact that Franklin saves her actually, I think, makes sense within the pale of the comic and within the general gist of the character. So I was fine with that. So overall, I was fine with it. How about you?
So I thought it was a really clever bit of writing to make Galactus's objective to find a replacement,
Okay,
and
good.
making that Franklin, I thought was good. The Deus Ex Machina at the end,
hmm
where he resurrects his mom, that sets up all kinds of problems. But it seemed like
It does.
a very cheap way around the problem.
Well, or I mean, in some ways it was, although it may also have been an attempt to demonstrate his significance. Because I think if you look at the mid-credit scene where he's there with Doom, I think he's going to become really important in these next couple of movies.
Right. Which I have mixed feelings about because I've never really thought that Super Baby was a great part of the Fantastic Four continuity. I don't necessarily love the stories that center around Franklin, but they could do a good
Well,
job in the
and
movies.
just a question: have you? When was your cutoff for Franklin stories? Are we talking about the Byrne era? Are we talking about in the any time in this
So
century?
I read some of the more contemporary ones too.
Uh,
Yeah. So from like the 2010s,
hmm
so and even then it was just okay. Like when he gets when Doctor Doom kidnaps him to hell, and
hmm
I've been through those stories, and I
hmm
just trying to work out the details of a an omnipotent being,
hmm
is something that comics have done a lot. Marvel Comics has done a lot,
hmm
with the Sentry is a near omnipotent character, or the Beyonder
hmm
as a villain, and so forth. And it kind of loses me, if you
No,
crank it up to that scale of cosmicness.
I can accept that, and there are parts of the Franklin story in general that I hold some similar qualms. I guess I am. I think this is being being a nerd about it. I mean, it bothers me less that it actually derives from the material it's from the source material. So it
Yeah,
bothers me less than if they'd made it up for the movies.
right. I would have been fine if it just had been Franklin as a baby without
Right. No, I would have been fine with it too.
any godlike powers.
No, yes. But of course, then that totally undercuts your. him Galactus wanting him, I think. Well, it could have undercut.
Well, he could see the
It-
potential, but you didn't
that's
have
true.
to have the resurrection scene. Like
That's
everything
true.
else, including like the Silver Surfer knocking
Hmm.
Galactus into the
Hmm.
wormhole and so forth,
Yeah.
all that would have worked fine. The only thing that you needed him to have superpowers for was for the contrived non-death of his mom.
Hmm. No, that's fair. That's totally fair.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, in
Other
general, I don't like contrived non-deaths. How about that?
There you go. Because the movie didn't need it. I mean,
Yeah.
it would have been
No.
great to end. Okay, yay, we saved our baby and we defeated Galactus.
So since some people, I mean, it is an interesting fake out in this sense. Apparently some people thought, and I've heard and read more than one person say this, they thought that Galactus would in fact consume Earth 828, and that would cause the Fantastic Four to move into Earth 616. So
Right.
maybe it was a bit of a fake out that someone might die.
Okay.
Anyway, that's whether it's good or
Anyway,
not. Anyway,
but
moving.
anyways, but anyway, we're going to talk someday about like the cosmic level superheroes in the Marvel universe, like Captain Marvel and Warlock
Right.
and others. The Silver Surfer some more because he had his own comic series for a long time, off and on. Like with Thanos, like that's an interesting character who gains omnipotence, but you get to see him gain omnipotence, and he's already an interesting character.
Right.
There's not a heck of a lot you can do with a baby, right?
No,
It's not like,
yeah.
oh, here's the Mad Titan who wants to, for his own twisted logic, eliminate half of all life in the universe. That's interesting, and then cranking it up to godlike powers,
Hmm.
is makes a very urgent story. How are we going to
No,
stop somebody with this level of power? But here it's just okay. You've got God, baby. Now what?
some of this is, I think, part of the general evolution, and I only am of the Marvel universe to be more and more focused on these really overpowered characters like the Celestials and the Eternals. I started reading, and this is 20 something years old now. I started reading Earth X the other day because
Mm,
apparently part of this is some of this Franklin Galactus stuff may derive at least in part from that storyline. But the part that I've read thus far is really all very much about first the Celestials and the Eternals and the Inhumans and all this sort of hugely sort of cosmological discussions about the Marvel Universe,
right.
which I contrast in my head when I was rereading a couple of years ago. I started to read some of the early Defenders comics, which are
Mm,
pretty powerful characters, and they're fighting street thugs. So it's
yes.
just like, so it is this weird way in which, I mean, in some ways, it's what happened in the Superman movie, right? He's
Yeah.
so powerful, he can't just fight street crime. He's like, the universe is threatened. I mean, pocket universes and antimatter rivers and all this kind. It's like, it is a challenge in these comics that they become more than just even Batman, who supposedly
Right.
mostly, just grabbing toughs off the streets, ends up fighting very powerful beings. Anyway, I digress. What's next on
Yeah.
your list, Tom?
So I think we covered most of these points already. So let's just kind of get into like as a setup for the next Avengers movie. You're excited,
I'm excited generically. I don't, in some ways, it's kind of nice that I don't know. Unlike in the Infinity War stuff, I don't really know where this is going. I'm guessing. So
right?
that's sort of good and bad, I guess, in the sense that I'm not sure what they've set up. I'm really just interested. I enjoyed these characters. I enjoyed this movie enough that I'm now interested in what happens next.
Right. So I'm interested too. I don't know as a setup for Doctor Doom if this is really a
No, they haven't set it up at
a,
all.
a great turn. He's there. Again, if you didn't know who Doctor Doom is, the references to Latveria
Hmm.
that you saw wouldn't mean anything. And in the mid credits sequence where he's crouching next to Franklin, that wouldn't mean a heck of a lot. I don't know.
Hmm.
I kind of feel like I've been happy not having Doctor Doom in the Marvel universe. It's been okay by me.
Hmm.
There's when it's been good, up through Infinity War and Endgame. So like I wasn't sitting there watching these movies thinking, "Where's Doctor Doom? Where's Doctor Doom? Why isn't there a Doctor Doom?" But if you're going to bring him in, I kind of feel like although he's going to be apparently the centerpiece of the movie, maybe he'll get a little lost in the shuffle with the 173 other characters who are going to be in that movie.
It's possible. I mean, again, I have mixed feelings. I mean, would I like to maybe have seen, but again, this becomes in the ponderousness of all these movies. Would I have liked to have seen maybe a second Fantastic Four movie that fully introduced Doctor Doom before we got to the Doomsday stuff?
Yes.
That probably. I guess I will wait and I'll hold judgment as to how they do this. I don't know how they're going to do it.
Because
Because the
he's a different sort of villain,
he
right? So
is.
he is the ruler of a country. And with last episode, when we were talking about "This Land Is Mine," that one
Hmm.
storyline, where he returns and kind of regains control with the kind of unwilling assistance of the Fantastic Four. That is a hard thing to set up in an Avengers movie.
Yeah.
That he is the ruler of a country. I don't even know if Latveria exists in the normal MCU. So what is he going to be? I don't know. Maybe it's going to be great. I don't know.
Well, this is the thing, right? The entire difficulty is not only is it Doctor Doom a complicated character, we've got two universes that we're dealing with here.
Right, right.
Is the Doctor Doom that's talking to Franklin at the end of the mid-credit sequence the one from Latveria in Earth 828? Or is it the
Yeah,
one from Earth 616? Or is it the one from Earth, 42069? I don't know where he's from. Nobody knows where he's from. So we'll find out. But that creates some of the difficulty.
right.
We don't even know if there is a Doctor Doom, even though the Latveria thing could have been a dodge, right? I mean, maybe he's not even a real guy in this universe.
Yeah, because it still feels like introducing Doom at this point is desperate fan service, not something that easily grows out of what
I
they're
mean,
doing with these movies.
I don't know. One day I want to debate what fan service means. I don't know if it's desperate. I think that I mean, the desperate part may be casting Robert Downey Jr. as Doom. But I think Doom, I mean, really what's going on here, I mean, this is straightforwardly true, right? I mean, the reason why we get the Fantastic Four movie now is because of mergers and acquisitions in the
Right.
corporate world, right? So that for those that don't know, right? I mean, Spider-Man, the X-Men, and the Fantastic Four were all had under their own licensing deals well before the MCU was created. That's why you don't have mutants in the MCU, why you don't have the Fantastic Four, and why it took a deal to get Spider-Man into the
Hmm.
MCU. So part of this is just sequencing based not on story, sequencing not based on any kind of logic, but now we can do it. And I guess I'm forgiving of the following. Doctor Doom's freaking awesome, so now we can do it, so we're going to do it. That's kind of how I look at it, rather than
Yeah.
desperation per se. But it does create these difficulties, and part of why this movie has to be in a different universe, or I mean, it didn't have to be, I guess, but it had to explain the Fantastic Four not being around. And it would be super weird for the Fantastic Four, instead of being the first family of Marvel, to somehow be a recent development of the Marvel
Yeah,
Universe,
the
right?
last family.
Yeah, that wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So here's a question. This is a totally nerdy question. Geek alert time.
Okay.
So this is my question that doesn't make any difference, but it kept occurring to me. So is in fact this movie set in the 1960s, or is Earth 828 in 2025 simply a retro future looking 60s universe?
I think the implication is the latter,
Okay.
that it is a it looks like the Kennedy era, but it's
Hmm.
actually 2025.
Yeah.
And it almost doesn't matter really,
No,
but
it
yeah,
doesn't.
yeah,
But I mean, it's just interesting because then there would be time travel and interdimensional travel, which I mean,
right.
why do we do that? I told you it didn't really matter, and it's totally geeky, but I just kept thinking about it. Um, so we'll see how things play out. But yeah, I again, spoilers for the Thunderbolts, because I did look up the end of movie sequence, because I know there's a reference to the
Uh-huh.
Fantastic Four, and
Yeah.
their ship does come through an interdimensional rift at the end of that movie. You don't see the
Right.
characters; you just see the spaceship with the F, with the four on the side, not
Right.
the F.
Yeah.
So there is that.
Which is a terrific retro rocket ship,
Oh yeah.
I thought.
Uh,
Yeah.
All
Well,
of the
still looking
sets,
like contemporary technology, like when,
yes,
the shuttle part of it kind of separates from it.
yes.
Yeah.
Although it's so, I mean, maybe this is like totally Reed Richards, maybe it's just silly movie contrivance. It's hilarious to me that he's totally reluctant to go into space, and yet he has an FTL harness just orbiting the
Right.
Earth in case he needs it.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that was great. Um,
So since we're talking about alternate universes, and I already
yes.
alluded to this, and this is never going to happen in our universe, but
Hmm.
there is an alternate universe where instead of, as I said earlier, rolling the Fantastic Four into the MCU,
Hmm.
they decide just to build from where the Fantastic Four movie started things.
Hmm.
Really take things back to the 1960s,
Hmm.
not with all the misogynistic
Right.
baggage or
Right.
racial baggage or anything. We're just talking about the straightforwardness, the innocence, the
Hmm.
optimism of Marvel Comics at that point.
Right.
And although I'm not a big fan of reboots, I would be glad to see them start over with a lot of the characters we love.
Right.
Iron Man, Thor, you name it, right? That
Hmm.
that that would be an attractive alternative to what we're getting. And I think
No,
that would be that they could do stories that are broadly appealing,
mhm.
that would kind of deal like just machete away all the complexity that they have managed to overgrow the whole Marvel franchise with. Not have to kind of come up with convoluted explanations for
Mhm.
things. Like, okay, now the Fantastic Four went through a dimensional rift, but anyway, it would that would be a charming way to go about making Marvel movies in the future. It's not going to happen,
No, it's not going to
but I
happen.
can I can I can dream.
I get sure. I think really what you're describing is inherently a problem with comic books in general, right?
Hmm. Right.
That this all becomes convoluted, and
Hmm.
so and something we haven't talked about as a full episode. Maybe we will at some point. We've made allusions to it over the last dozen or so, up 2 dozen, however many we've done these things now. That especially in our adulthood, they keep rebooting things in a way that's
Right.
confusing to old people like us. Like,
Hmm.
what?
Though I understand the need for it.
No, I totally understand the need for it. So, in
Hmm.
some ways, this is what's happened to the MCU. I think I am um, maybe a little less critical of this than you are, although I agree with your basic premise. I think that it's a double-edged sword because I think on the one hand, the degree to which they've created this shared universe across dozens of properties is pretty impressive. And especially the way it culminated with the Avengers with Endgame was very impressive in Infinity War.
Yeah.
So the way, but yeah, but it does become a chore at some point. But that's like being a comics fan. After a while, it becomes a chore to figure out all the interconnected, crossovers for We Blow Up the Universe This Summer Yet Again, Part Six. So
Well, I'm gonna push back on that a little bit,
okay.
and I don't necessarily disagree with you, but just to take the other side for a moment, when the Fantastic Four reached 100 issues,
Hmm.
that was somewhere in like the early 70s,
Hmm.
I want to say, late 60s. So that was 100 issues, right? There
Hmm.
was a lot that happened in those 100 issues,
Hmm.
and there was a lot that happened in Spider-Man,
Hmm.
and a lot that happened in the Avengers, you name it, right?
Hmm.
I don't remember feeling overwhelmed by complexity at that point
Right.
because they've compressed so much into the MCU in at such a rapid
Uh,
pace.
So my pushback is going to be a little bit of this. I mean, 100 issues just ends up not being that many. Like I pointed out in the previous podcast, right? The 250th issue of Fantastic Four, or no, it was the 20th anniversary of the Fantastic Four was like issue 236.
Hmm.
That was 44 years ago, or 45, whatever the number is.
Right.
So I think there's probably some natural amount of time where it just becomes unwieldy. I mean, even in the FF, before the run we talked about, there's a
Hmm.
bit in the whole Galactus Sphinx Nova storyline that I talked about multiple times, where first the three core members, Ben, Sue, and Reed, are hit by a scroll. The aging ray is like a slow motion execution,
Okay.
and then that gets reversed, and in the reversal they become younger than they were slightly. Because part of the problem, even in the late 70s, was these people are like getting old. They're supposed to be
Yes.
World War II veterans or whatever, and that doesn't
Right.
work anymore.
Well, yeah, you
And
just conveniently don't mark the passage of time in
right,
comics often, right? Like,
so
oh yeah, it's Tony Stark was in Vietnam when he
that's right,
built his
exactly.
first Iron
Or
Man
that,
suit.
by the time Franklin in the burn run, he's still a
A
elementary.
kid.
He's like a kid. He's like 5 or 6, but
Yeah.
he's like, I don't know, at that point, 10, 15 years old. I can't remember. It's at least 10 years.
Okay.
So I mean, there is a critical mass. Now, part of it is another thing I would say about, for good or for ill, right? Because I remember thinking about this as a young comic collector, and it's something I've made some passing reference to on the podcast. If you read the earlier comics, while there's some crossovers, they don't cross over that much. They still like tend to remain in their little lanes, right? It's like I've said before, Galactus shows up
Hmm.
and not everyone shows up to fight Galactus, or there's some
Right.
other total disaster going on, and somehow every other superhero's out of town this week, but whoever the star of the book is, they're fighting the thing this week.
Right.
And so I think there was a tendency, which I appreciate, but that also leads to a complication of starting to think about, well, what's the implication of all these people living in the same universe? And the other part is pure capitalism. They start having more and more books, right? Wolverine gets his own title. There's like 4 X-Men titles. There's a gajillion Spider-Man titles, and so at
Right.
some point it does become bloated. And so you get to the reboot phase. So in some ways, I think the movies in some ways replicated this. The movies, which I liked, I don't like. One of the things I don't like about, I mean, they're individuals, they're great. Like Superman 78 is great. The first first two
Hmm.
Spider-Man movies, I think are great. The X-Men movies are quite good. But at some point, I don't like the idea that just one superhero in all of the world,
Right.
that doesn't make sense, partially because I'm a comics nerd. But so I like the introduction and the interaction and the fact that none of these movies are really solo movies, really, except in some specific examples. And I like the idea of it being in a broader universe. Now, maybe they haven't handled it as well as they should have, and they certainly made too many movies for a while. I mean, I can't remember. So the pace for this current phase, whatever phase we're in right now of the MCU, I forget which phase it is a lot fewer movies. We also went through a whole era. This becomes a broader reality about, I think, media. We went through a period, which we're out of now, where, especially with the streaming services, there was this just, they were throwing money at everything, right?
Yes.
And so we got a lot, which in some ways is nice, but on the other hand, maybe too much. Maybe
Hmm.
too much Star Wars, maybe too much Marvel, maybe too much Star Trek. And that pains me to even say that phrase. But, and I think we're in a contraction now where the economics don't, they just don't support that model.
No. Well,
And
so
also just there's a fatigue factor, right?
yeah, I mean, well, so pushback on your pushback to my pushback. You're kind of making my point, which is a lot of this is a
Oh,
corporate
am
decision.
I? I don't, I'm
Are
sorry.
you? Boy, that's an academic moment for both of us. You're kind of making my own point for me. Ha ha ha. I say, gesturing with my pipe at
Yeah.
you.
I have, I have more of a comment than a question.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Sorry.
Uh,
I'm sorry. Your pushback on my pushback to your pushback to prove your point was,
was they decided to have this complexity,
mhm,
right?
yeah.
So aside from like a little footnote here that every once in a while in Marvel Comics there was a little crossover. Spider-Man
Mhm,
would swing in, or
mhm,
Doctor Strange, they needed Doctor Strange's help with something. But like they didn't need to have Ironheart, Moon Knight, all these things that they threw into the MCU, which,
Right.
as a comics fan, normally I would feel great. Even the cameo of Man-Thing in a one-shot movie, could be something that would, be fun, but man, it's just like there's so much of it now that they decided to jam in all at once. It's like, as you aptly said, having five X books
Hmm.
plus Wolverine plus however many Spider-Man books there
Hmm.
were at the time. It was nuts, and just kind of like unraveling all of that is just a mind-boggling and
No, it's true.
tedious exercise that's
No, I
completely unnecessary.
we certainly agree that the volume in whether it's the comics themselves or whether it's the movies and TV is just too much.
Yeah.
It's and so I mean, yeah, it's all about business. It's the same reason why I mean, really in the late 80s, really the early 90s, where they just would overpublish things because they knew people would buy them. I mean, this is ultimately a business. Now that ended up being a bad business model for them because the 90s are not a great time for comic books after a little while, um, but yeah, I mean, I there is this balance which the market doesn't fully. Well, the market corrects eventually, I guess. You
Hmm.
make too many of something and people stop wanting to see it the way they used to.
Right.
And so there's that, I guess. It's an inevitable cycle, I suppose. Um, I mean, I guess part of what I'm trying to say somewhat inelegantly is even though there's been too many Marvel movies, I think that's a fair, and TV shows, that's a fair thing to say. Because I certainly haven't consumed all of them, and I probably never will consume all of them. And too many often means a degradation in quality. I still the 12-year-old geek in me still prefers the oversaturation where I don't watch all of them than to waiting 3 years between everything that I loved because it took so long to make everything. So
Okay.
I mean, I don't know that, I'd rather have more and some of it not be as good than to not have it at all, I guess. And this is the difficulty with all this, I suppose, is that how much is too much and how much is just enough. And always leave them wanting more, but there's there's also often really well, I mean, Wolverine's a good example to me. So I remember
Hmm.
thinking again, 12 years old probably, and thinking, well, Wolverine's really cool. I wish he had his own comic book. Well, he didn't for the longest time, which kind of struck me as weird. But then
Right.
eventually he gets a miniseries, and then he gets a comic. So, at some point there is a value add to that, and then at some point it becomes way too much. When it's the X-Men, there's two X-Men books. I'm just thinking in the late 90s, right? There's the mainline X-Men, the Uncanny X-Men, then they had the Prestige X-Men, they had the New Mutants, they had X-Factor, Wolverine had a book, and after that even more stuff comes out. So then it becomes way too many mutants. How
Yeah.
many mutants is too many mutants? That's the eternal question. So
Well, we know what Bolivar Trask would say.
yes, we do. You know what? I'm not going to answer that question. Either you know the answer or you don't.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And we don't judge you either way.
Well, maybe. Uh,
Secretly, we judge, but
Secretly, sure.
on the surface, we say we don't judge.
Of course not.
Well, so that's the other point I want to make. Is it's possible to have a good solo Wolverine
Hmm.
book
Hmm.
or TV series or
Hmm.
series of movies or whatever, just as it's possible to have a good Daredevil focused TV series, because not everything needs to be cosmic, right?
No,
The
that's
the
yes.
more often the world is in threat, I
Well, I agree
think
with
the
that.
harder you make it for everybody trying to tell a story.
No, that's
Uh,
the main downfall of Star Trek Discovery. Toward the end, every season was a cataclysmic challenge, which was
right.
just exhausting.
Right. And so here is the harbinger of this in the past, which was you had a couple of different series, back in the 80s and 90s where there was a cosmic menace. So you
Hmm.
had in DC there was Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Hmm.
In Marvel you had the Infinity Gauntlet. And I thought at the time when they did those that like one and done was enough, right?
Yeah,
You
I agree.
but then they all started doing all the crossovers for commercial
Sure.
reasons, where every summer you would have the universe is in jeopardy yet again, and of course you then have to involve everybody. Of course you have to have explanations about how all these different characters involved and why it isn't resolved like by Doctor Strange throwing a spell or whatever the Occam's or cutting the Gordian knot would be in that situation.
You know
Um,
what? So if Occam's razor cut the Gordian knot,
exactly.
that'd be
I
fantastic.
was mixing my metaphors wildly there. Uh, So just keep it street level, man. I mean, a lot like well, the way it worked in in 100 issues of Spider-Man was Spider-Man wasn't facing the world being eaten by Galactus or Thanos showing up or whatever, every time. It was,
No,
hey, Dr. Octopus is back. That's a bad thing. Let's do something about
well,
it.
I think this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier, and when I talked about just the inflation, I think, of these villains. I
Yes,
mean, it may be inevitable. Again, it seems silly for the Defenders to fight street like the mafia or something. It just doesn't make any sense.
right.
But that's what they used to do. I mean, Superman used
Yeah.
to fight like gangsters. That was the thing. It's inevitable that there's a creep in all of this, and I guess the reset stuff is also inevitable because you just hit a point where you have to reset. It's difficult to keep track of all this stuff. I mean, really only kept track of it. I'll speak to myself. I really kept track of it for
Hmm.
what, 10 years?
Yeah.
Más o menos. I mean, that's how long. And then after that, it becomes a chore or an expense or whatever. And part of it's the
Hmm.
market is what the market is. And all this is to make money. So you need to make more stuff to sell more stuff to get people interested in buying, and it's going to have spectacle, and it's just impossible to totally avoid. And then all we can hope for is on occasion there's something truly new and different that we can partake in.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. But if it's another cosmic crossover,
No, it's going to be. It's
I
going to
think
be.
that's a mistake. I think
I mean, the
because
problem becomes, yeah, we're mistaken. What I mean,
well,
artistic
so
mistake, but they may make a
their last
boatload of
effort
money.
failed. Their last effort failed.
Which one?
It failed both. Well, the whole multiverse, right? So they were planning on
Oh,
Kang and the
oh yeah, yeah,
multiverse
yeah, yeah,
being
yeah. Yeah.
a replay of the level of success, both in
Oh
terms of
yeah.
the
Well,
quality of
that's
content as well as commercially as the Infinity War
yeah,
was.
yeah, yeah.
And I might say as an executive, we can still get a lot of rabid fans in, and do an occasional, crossover where Spidey has to work with the
Mhm.
Fantastic Four. We can still do that without having these baroque sorts of storylines
Mhm.
that seem like incapable of stopping ourselves from setting up. All right.
Stop or I'll Baroque again.
Baroque, Rococo, I don't know what the
I
right
don't
word
know.
is. Byzantine. I like Byzantine.
Byzantine actually fits, I
I
think.
think I'll replace it with Byzantine. Okay.
Labyrinthine? No,
Labyrinthine. There we go.
no.
Anything else you want to say about the movie?
I'm quickly looking through my notes. Is there something very specific that I did not
I
mention?
like the little nods to some of the old Fantastic Four villains. That was cute.
Yeah, that was
That was a
fun.
nice,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
being
yeah, yeah.
too dependent on nerdy people like us. But if the nerdy people like us heard Diablo,
That's right. That's
and
right.
the Wizard, we say, "Oh, that's fun." Okay.
So I will say this: the link back to our burn issue. What did I want to see? So I think everything that I said that I wanted to see ended up in the movie.
Mhm.
They directly name check, not just name check. They directly stated that Galactus is a force of nature. So
Yes.
that was in the thing. The family aspect I think was central to the film.
Hmm.
And it does have the sort of sci-fi cosmicness that I wanted to see. So
Absolutely.
I was pleased in all those areas. You know, I mean I maybe of the four characters, the one that I would have liked to have seen maybe a little bit more was Reed Richards, but I was still satisfied with all of it. Um, Again, I mean, the highest praise for me is always, but do I want to see more of this? And the answer is yes. And the fact that it has
Yes.
a spillover effect to other things that I've gotten tired of. So it's a revitalization, at least to some degree in my mind. Whether I'll actually go out and watch Thunderbolts, I don't know. But maybe. My Disney Plus thing is lapsed. I'm not sure if it's even available right now. But I was pleased with it ultimately. And as someone that really loves these characters, I think, certainly an acceptable, if not maybe beyond acceptable, a very good portrayal of these characters on film. So I was pleased by that. How
Yeah.
about yourself? Any parting thoughts?
No, I think I think I've said enough. So let's get to our wrap up question, which we always have, is about merch.
Hmm.
Any merch from this movie
Okay,
you wish
so
you had?
can I guess what yours is? It's a flying Herbie.
No, it's not a flying Herbie.
You always want a flying thing.
I'm sorry. I'm just mercurial today. Who knows what I'll say or do? Mine would actually be just like the turtleneck sweater.
Oh,
I like the color scheme.
I did.
It looked
I
pretty
like the
cool.
uniforms. I
You
like
don't
the fact
even
that
have to have the four on it. It could just suggest that it's
I was pleased they never explained why their uniforms were not totally uniform.
yeah.
Because Reed doesn't have the white collar.
No,
And the sleeves are different at least Sue's sleeves are different than Johnny and Ben's sleeves.
I
I
know.
noticed these weird things.
Well, this isn't really the Fantastic Four now that they
I
don't
know
have
it's
uniforms.
I've ruined the movie. Sorry.
That's
Yeah, I think I would like a miniature of Galactus if I'm picking something.
that's good. Yeah, but not the popcorn bucket. You didn't buy the popcorn bucket.
No, in fact, I looked. I don't know if they had it where I saw the film or not.
I didn't even
It's
look, but
insanely like $80. I can't remember.
80 bucks.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't need
And
no.
what are you going to do with it, right? And
I did
I,
see. I don't remember where I saw it. There was someone who was cosplaying as Galactus, and they had popcorn in the helmet. And
oh,
they were
that's
like
funny.
reaching up and getting popcorn, and I thought that was great. But I don't remember
Yeah.
where I saw it. Probably on Reddit somewhere. But yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. I would have no place to put it. I mean, I could, put it someplace, but I just say it probably wouldn't be welcome.
I suspect not. What is that? Yeah,
Yeah, why are you? It's a it's for plants, honey. Just put
that's right.
plants in
Sure.
it. He's the consumer of plants.
He's gone vegan.
All right. Have we exhausted the
I
Fantastic
think
Four?
we've exhausted the
I
Fantastic
think
Four.
we had a
Hopefully, we
lot
haven't
to talk. We had a
exhausted
lot
the
to talk
listeners.
about it.
We
had a
did.
lot to talk about in this episode.
We did.
All right, well, listeners, well, thanks again for hearing us geek out, and we'll see you next time.
Adios.
Well, that's all the fantastic we can handle for one day. Thanks for listening. You can find us on the podcast app or platform of your choice, where we'd be grateful if you'd subscribe, because there's more fantastic content to come. We're always also grateful for reviews on the podcast app of your choice. And if you want to contact us directly, drop us a line at someancientgeeks@gmail.com. Look for us on Reddit, Facebook, Blue Sky, and other social media outlets. All fantastic content, copyright 2025, Tom Grant and Stephen Taylor. The fantastic music is by Reversed Image, who you can find on Pixabay. See you next time.
Reed, look, it's Thor!
Stay thy hand, villain.